from the research that I do. The research, for me, is thrilling. The press reports the results of research, which for some projects can take many, many years. So if you want to become a scientist, you have to learn to love the questions just as much as the answer, because in fact, in some cases, you don't even get to an answer. You find out you're navigating the wrong path. So the people who say, oh, graduate school is a pay, I can't, that is science. What you're doing as a graduate student is becoming a research scientist, and that's what you do. You work long hours, you're in the lab, you occasionally forego personal hygiene. You know, this is what that is, okay? I bet you Darwin and Newton did not smell very good, all right, is my guess, okay? Newton, while he is discovering calculus, all right, he's probably not saying, oh, I need a shower about now. No, he's pretty focused doing what he's doing, all right? And so that's where I derive my energy to share the passion. Now, I would do so no matter what, but there's a more important reason for doing it. And that is most pure research in the sciences that goes on in America today, that's not product-driven, goes on at universities, and the source of those monies are from public-based, tax-based funding agencies. So, collectively, we pay taxes to the country's portfolio of spending, some of which funds the science that's conducted by scientists. As a result, the science that's done, the scientist that conducts the research, is obligated to the public to share with them the fruits of their research. The public paid for it. And I submit to you that there was an era before that was taken seriously. There was an era where the scientist in the lab would say, the press is beneath me. They'll probably get my story wrong. I don't want to have anything to do with them. Leave me alone. That happened only to the peril of the funding stream that went into those labs. And the first person to realize this in a big way was, in fact, Carl Sagan. Because what happened was, he would start bringing science to the public. He did it sort of first and best. And colleagues said, what, you're on the Tonight Show? You're a scientist, and you'd stoop to go on the Tonight, and he was criticized for this, criticized. Meanwhile, the scientific community saw their budgets rise. And so in astrophysics, we learned earlier than in other fields, the value, the general value of bringing the fruits of our research to the public. And I can tell you that I don't know if I'm biased, probably I am, but maybe a little bit is not. I think Hubble images are pretty cool. I think these pictures I showed you tonight are kind of awesome. I think all of us, at some point, we look up and wonder what our place is in this universe. And a small fraction of the total population gets to actually call that their career. So at no time do I take it for granted that it is not only a privilege to study the universe, it's an honor to do so with the sanction of those who are taxpayers and who even come out and hear a lecture that I give. Thank you all again. Seattle. If you are operating on the surface of a planet in one way or another, would you have an impact of some kind, some influence on the chemistry of the atmosphere? Yeah. Because you can measure the chemistry of an atmosphere from great distances. Mm-hmm. That'll be the first thing. With telescopes aren't good enough to go look at cities or anything going on. You can't do that, all right? Not yet. But between now and when such a day arises, you analyze the atmosphere. And I can tell you a few things. If we find oxygen, we know chemically that oxygen is so highly reactive that you can't possibly have a planet that has oxygen without something constantly generating it. Yeah. If you removed all plants from this earth, the oxygen would slowly but eventually go away entirely. Yeah. They make the oxygen. They're sustaining the oxygen. Other things are using the oxygen. You don't find an atmosphere of oxygen. And when I was a kid and I saw Star Trek, where they say, well, let's land on this planet, well, let's beam down to the planet, it's an oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere, yeah. And they'd go down and there's no life. No, you're not just looking for a planet that happens to have an oxygen atmosphere. Something is making it actively. So that would be an indication of life. Then, if you find things like smog or other sort of pollutants, that would be the surest sign of the absence of intelligence in who's ever living there. Education, I think, at its best, is not telling you you're wrong or even telling you you're right. It's teaching you how to be curious so that you know how to find an answer. And so if I tell you that if you rub these crystals together, it'll heal you, and you say, oh, wow, that's great, give me them, I'll buy them. You say, well, that's stupid, right? Or if you say, that's ridiculous, get out of here, you know, that is equally as intellectually lazy as it is to accept them. What takes more work is questioning it. Where do they come from? What are they made of? What's their chemical composition? Where did you find them? What tests showed that what you're... By the time you ask, the person's gone. They're not going to sell it to you because you asked questions. So the point is, there are people who are being handed their opinions. They're being handed their points of views by people who they do not know how to question. And those are not the seeds of an informed democracy. In fact, that's the beginning of the unraveling of an informed democracy. And the moment somebody's opinion is handed to everybody, that we know what kind of governments those are, and those are not free societies. Those are free societies where your thought is controlled by people. I also think of time as this prison. Time makes us all a prisoner of the present, forever transitioning from our own past into an unknown future. And that's particularly disturbing to me because we can move back and forth in any other coordinate. You know, up and down, left and right, forward and back, but we're stuck in time. We can't move forward or backwards in time arbitrarily. So that coordinate has a kind of a fundamental difference from the other three. Now, my professional ancestors, the earliest astronomers, basically invented timekeeping, all right? Yes. So all measures of time historically were derived from cosmic rhythms. So today we would say the rotation of the Earth, but in the day it was the movement of the sun. Yeah. So that gave you a day, and then the sun's position on the sky throughout the days differed, and temperatures changed, so that gave us the seasons. And then, of course, back then it was the sun doing all this, but we would learn that we rotate and we revolve around the sun. So that took really long to figure out, disturbingly long. I mean, only like 400 years ago. So what it tells you is that you can keep track of time even though you have no freaking idea what's going on. Because all that matters to you is that things repeat. Yeah. If you have something that repeats predictably, then you have created a timekeeping mechanism. So there's a journalistic urge among science journalists to hang out in the coffee lounges of, I'm stereotyping this, but the sense is correct. Hang out in the coffee lounges of science departments, or in the science workshops where people are reporting the latest results, or you hang out at the editorial offices of Nature magazine or Science magazine. And a research paper gets published that conflicts with previous work or comes out with some new idea. The journalist reports that as truth. That is not a scientific truth. One research paper, refereed and published, does not make a scientific truth. We have systems in place that establish scientific truths, and it is not ever a single paper. Somebody else has to verify that. Somebody else has to check it. Somebody else has to do a different kind of experiment looking for the same phenomenon, a different way so that they don't duplicate what might be the error in your designed experiment. Once this happens, then you have an emergent truth. And so people don't actually, because of this, people don't actually understand how and why science works, which I think is why you have people throwing snowballs in Congress, all right, on the floor of the House of Representatives, and you have people hearing, oh, cholesterol's good for you this week, it's bad for you next week, it's going to be good for you in a month, thinking that scientists have their head up their ass,
okay.
When in fact...
It's the journalists who do.
Well, no. So it's how you report.
Okay, but this is where I want to go. Apply...
The reason why the results change each week, because it hasn't settled out yet. So don't report it as true.
So apply, this is where I really want to go.
Sorry,
apply
I'm screaming. Sorry.
This is what we want. This is what we want.
He started that. I was calm before that began.
There was one thing you wanted people to remember that you could say about science. What would that be?
That the universe is knowable, and one need not appeal to mystical, magical forces to account for things. Even if a day arises where something unfolds in front of your eyes that you cannot explain, just because you cannot explain it does not mean it is being driven by mystical, magical forces. It just means it's being driven by laws of physics that we know and you have yet to learn, or that we have all yet to discover. But the universe is knowable, and that's an amazing thing. It's knowable by our feeble human brain that rose up out of the Serengeti, the plains of Africa, to rise up just to survive, to not get eaten. And we build a civilization where we have sufficient free time so that we can contemplate our place in the universe. I don't want the religious person in the lab telling me that God is responsible for what it is they cannot discover. Because look at the hubris of that. You're in the lab and you say, I don't know how this works. And not only that, no one alive on Earth knows how this works. And not only that, no one who will ever be born will know how this works. That's kind of audacious when you think about it. And then you put it down and go on to the next problem. This problem is a cure for Alzheimer's or cancer or whatever else. I don't want them in the science classroom. And so the issue is simply about progress and discovery. And in my recent forays into Washington, well, I've been closer to a community of Republicans than I have ever been in my life, because I grew up in New York City. And in New York City, I think that person is Republican back there. You see? No, not that one, the one behind that person. Yeah, that's a Republican. There's another one. That's in New York. So you grow up this way, and I get sort of baptized into a Republican administration. I had 2 consecutive appointments in the Bush administration, one on aerospace, on the aerospace industry, and one on space exploration, NASA's future, basically. And I realized something, spending that much time in the community of powerful Republicans, that Republicans, above all else, do not want to die poor. So, there's a limit to how far this will go. And I bet most people in this room, even those assembled at this table, were highly concerned about the Dover trial, wondering how that would turn. And I looked at that and I said, I'm not worried, because it's a Republican judge. And in the end, if you put people who are not making discoveries in the science classroom, that is the end of the foundation of your future economy. And so I had a little more confidence than others did because of this sensitivity to the money aspect of it. But we all know tomorrow's economies will be founded on innovations in science and technology, and of course that gets cut short if we lose our civilization, as what happened in Islam in 1100. And the last thought I'll leave you with, which concerns me greatly, if you do the math, okay? Just look, you look at all the Nobel Prize winners there ever were, some even in this room, and ask how many were Muslim. And it's like 1, maybe 2, okay? I think a second one was in economics. And the one we referred to was described earlier, the the Nobel Prize with Professor Weinberg, Abdus Salam. And he's not Middle Eastern Muslim, he's Pakistani Muslim. Okay? Now, how many Nobel Prizes are won by Jews? It's like a fourth of the Nobel Prizes. Okay? Some high fraction of the total. And then you look, how many Muslims are there in the world? It's like 1 billion Muslims. How many Jews? 15 million tops. Okay? So you ratio these numbers. Had Islam not collapsed in its intellectual standing in the year 1100, and you just do the ratios, they would have every single Nobel Prize today. So the fact that it's not only just a few, it's near zero, is deeply worrying. I'm concerned about what brilliance may have expressed itself and did not in that community over the past 1,000 years. If NASA weren't around, what would happen to our universe? Well, I can tell you this. If NASA weren't here, we would know a lot less about the universe. And we would be intellectually impoverished by that fact. Because I enjoy knowing where we are, where we came from, and where we're going. And those questions are answered from space. To know how Earth got here, how the sun got here, what the future of Earth will be, what the future of our sun will be. Will we need to leave Earth and find another planet? All of that comes to us from the discoveries of a space program. Much of those discoveries have come from NASA. So it's not that the universe would be different if NASA never existed. It's that we would be different in a way that I don't even want to think about.
So we wouldn't know a single thing about the universe.
Yeah, we wouldn't know a single thing about the universe. We'd just be rummaging on Earth's surface thinking that our solutions to all our problems come from looking down rather than from looking up. Napoleon, if you visited his library, it's not just sort of books of world history and battles, it's engineering books, it's physics books. This man wanted to know where his cannonballs would land, all right? He was much more than just sort of a lucky general. He was into the physics, the engineering, and the material science of war. And so he immediately summoned up the 5-volume production of Laplace, read it through, cover to cover, called in Laplace, and said, "Sir, I have the exact quote here. Hang on. Napoleon asked him what role God played in the construction and regulation of the heavens. This is kind of like, that's what Newton would ask, right? Laplace replies, "Sir, I had no need for that hypothesis." And so what concerns me now is, even if you're as brilliant as Newton, you reach a point where you start basking in the majesty of God, and then your discovery stops. It just stops. You're kind of no good anymore for advancing that frontier, waiting for somebody else to come behind you who doesn't have God on the brain and who says, "That's a really cool problem, I want to solve it." They come in and solve it. But look at the time delay. This was a 100-year time delay. And the math that's in perturbation theory is like crumbs for Newton. He could have come up with that. The guy invented calculus just on a dare, practically. When someone asked him, Ike, how come planets orbit in ellipses and not some other shape? And he couldn't answer that. He goes home for 2 months, comes back, out comes integral differential calculus, because he needed that to answer that question. And so this is the kind of mind we were dealing with Newton. He could have gone there, but he didn't. He didn't. His religiosity stopped him. And so we're left with the realization, of course, that intelligent design, while real in the history of science, while real in the presence of sort of philosophical drivers, is nonetheless a philosophy of ignorance. And so, regardless of what our political agenda is, all you have to say is, science is a philosophy of discovery, intelligent design is a philosophy of ignorance. That's all. I don't need to see whether, have you discovered anything lately? If not, get out of the science classroom. But I'm not going to say, don't teach this, because it's real, it happened. So I don't want people to sweep it under the rug, because if you do, you're neglecting something fundamental that's going on in people's minds when they confront things they don't understand. And it happens to the greatest of the minds, as it happens to everyone else many, if not most other people in the public. If you look at people who are religious today, who are not in conflict with science, they have viewed their religious text as a spiritual, something that gives them spiritual support, not as a science textbook. The conflict in society is when you have those who are still religious, who want to use their religious text as their access point to understanding the natural world. And persistent efforts of the past to make that happen have just simply failed. The Bible does not work as a science textbook. In fact, Galileo knew this, and he himself was a religious man. He's famously quoted as saying, "The Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go." So there's that, but there's also, here's a little bit of intelligent design here. Here's one that wants to accept the science, but then is like what's before the Big Bang. We don't quite know yet, so God was there. So of course, intelligent design is basically a God of the gaps. But my favorite way to end this then is to just reflect on, I want to do it just a fast tirade on stupid design, and this will be fast. Look at all the things that just want to kill us, okay? Most planet orbits are unstable, star formation is completely inefficient, most places in the universe will kill life instantly. Instantly. The people that say, oh, the forces of nature are just right for life. Excuse me. Just look at the volume of the universe where you can't live. You will die instantly. That's not what I call the Garden of Eden, all right? Galaxy orbits that we orbit once every couple 100 million years, you're bound to come close to a supernova that will wipe out your ozone layer and kill everybody on the surface who doesn't otherwise have dark skin, because your high energy rays will give you skin cancer. We're on a collision course with the Andromeda Galaxy. Gone is this beautiful spiral that we have. And of course, we're on a one-way expanding universe as we wind down to oblivion, as the temperature of the universe asymptotically approaches absolute zero. That's the universe. Then Earth, volcanoes, tsunami just killed, I think that number's higher, up 200,000 people, floods, tornadoes. None of this is any sign that there's a benevolent anything out there. And this 90% should be 99%, as was earlier noted. That's of all life that has ever lived is now extinct. Inner solar system is a shooting gallery, comets, asteroids, duck. And look how long it took to make multicellular life. Not from the beginning of the Earth. Life happened quickly, but not multicellular life. You needed your cyanobacteria to sort of crank on the oxygen, get the oxygen budget going. Then you could have that's sort of rocket fuel for multicellular creatures. But that took 3.5 billion years. That's hardly an efficient plan with us in mind. And in human beings, this is like the most tragic of them. I don't even include here the expression of free will where people want to kill each other. I'm talking about nature killing us without the help of human beings. Aggressive childhood leukemia, hemophilia, all of this. And we so much praise about the human eye, but anyone who's seen the full breadth of the electromagnetic spectrum will recognize how blind we are. Okay? And part of that blindness means we can't see, we can't detect magnetic fields, ionizing radiation, radon. We are like sitting ducks for ionizing radiation. We have to eat constantly because we're warm-blooded. Crocodile eat a chicken a month, it's fine. Okay? So we're always looking for food. These gases at the bottom, you can't smell them, taste them, you breathe them in, you're dead. Okay? So, I'm almost done. I'm sorry, I'm taking up your time here. So, and with the birth defects, most are unknown. Look at this. Others, it's like abuse and infection and stuff that human beings had something to do with. We have no idea. Oops, I pushed a button by accident, sorry. No idea. No idea. And, and birth defects are tragic. They're tragic, particularly if they happen to the family afflicted by it. And you just look at images of these aborted fetuses because of and most of these are stillborn, others are born with a heart outside the body. And so this is all simply stupid design. And the problem is, if you look for what is intelligent, and yeah, you can find some things that are just really beautiful and really, hey, that's a clever, the ball socket of the shoulder, and a lot of things you can point to, but then you stop looking at all the things that confound that revelation. And so So if I came upon a frozen waterfall and it just struck me for all its beauty, I would then turn over the rock and try to find a millipede, okay, or some kind of deadly newt, and then put that in context and realize, of course, the universe is not here for us, for any singular purpose. My favorite of all is, of course, you eat, breathe, eat, and drink through the same hole in your body, guaranteeing that some percent of us will choke to death every year, okay? Imagine if you had a separate hole for breathing and eating and talking. That would be just really cool, right? You could drink, breathe, and just talk, and you would never choke, all right? And it's not a hard request. Dolphins breathe and eat through different holes in their body. And that's a mammal. So I'm not, you know, this is like Santa Claus could bring this one. And this one, of course, my favorite of all, like, what's this going on between our legs, right? As you've heard, like, you've heard it. It's like an entertainment complex in the middle of a sewage system. No engineer would design that at all, ever. It's like the wrong juxtaposition of elements. What he did was he didn't invoke Zeus to account for the rock that he's standing on or the air he's breathing. It was this point of mystery, and in gets invoked God. This, over time, has been described by philosophers as the God of the gaps. Mm-hmm. If that's where you're going to put your God in this world, then God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance. If that's how you're going to invoke God, if God is the mystery of the universe, these mysteries, we're tackling these mysteries one by one. If you're going to stay religious at the end of the conversation, God has to be more to you than just where science has yet to tread. So to the person who says maybe dark matter is God, if the only reason why you're saying it's because it's a mystery, then get ready to have that undone. You know, I'd be embarrassed to show an alien that we kill each other to extract energy sources beneath the sands when the universe is full of limitless amounts of starlight. And by the way, someone once, reading my tweets, someone asked, when I compose my tweets, am I high? You know, so it was weird. One time I was distracted by a doily, and I was concerned that not enough people paused to reflect on the beauty and majesty of a doily. Right? Just think about what a doily is, and it's just to sit under your cup. And so I got to tweet something about that now. Hang on a sec. Let me do this. Just be a moment. That's right, because I'd already started. So my response will be to those who ask, am I high? Knowing that the sky sits above the entire earth. That should tell you that the study of the universe is itself a state of natural high. Tweet. Okay.
Congress is considering pulling the plug on the James Webb Space Telescope, which is the successor.
Don't get me started.
No, I want to get you started. This is the successor to the Hubble, and they say it can peer into the universe and maybe see the moment when the universe was born. I don't even know how that happens. But it costs $6.8 billion.
Well, first of all, let's clarify what the NASA budget is. The bank bailout, that sum of money
could reach Venus.
That sum of money is greater than the entire 50-year running budget of NASA.
Wow.
And so when someone says we don't have enough money for this space probe, I'm asking, no, it's not that you don't have enough money. It's that the distribution of money that you're spending is warped in some way, that you are removing the only thing that gives people something to dream about tomorrow. Do you remember the 60s? You remember the 60s and 70s? You didn't have to go more than a week before there's an article in Life magazine, the home of tomorrow, the city of tomorrow, transportation of tomorrow. All that ended in the 1970s. After we stopped going to the moon, it all ended. We stopped dreaming. And so I worry that decisions that Congress makes doesn't factor in the consequences of those decisions on tomorrow. Tomorrow's gone.
You know what?
They're playing for tomorrow, metaphoric tomorrow, not the literal tomorrow. They're playing for the quarterly report. They're playing for the next election cycle. And that is mortgaging the actual future of this nation. The rest of the world is going to pass us by. I'm going to appeal to you in a way that most people don't. I'm going to tell you things other people are not telling you. You get people who are space enthusiasts. Let's go into space. It's our destiny. It's our next. Great nations do it. And I look at history and I say, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Here's what we got to do. We've known since the Industrial Revolution and earlier that innovation in science and technology, yes, it'll help defend the nation. But when you're not at war, you know what else innovation in science and technology does? It is the engine of tomorrow's economy. The engine. When Einstein wrote down his equation for the stimulated emission of radiation, which is the foundation of the laser, was he thinking to himself, barcodes? This is innovation in science, the applications of his ideas into machines requires the clever engineer, creative investors, and dynamic CEOs turn it into product. Don't ever tell me, why are you studying this? How is it helping me? You know, I don't know how it's going to help you. I have no idea. Neither did Faraday. He just knew you would tax it. Neither did Einstein. Neither did anybody who made great discoveries about our understanding and our relationship to nature.